So who has children first? And who seems to be barren for a time? So who else does Jacob marry?
The maids.
The maids, right. You know what's interesting? Don't take this for gospel, okay, but one of the commentaries was saying that when a woman was given a maid when she got married, that maid was to be the midwife
For the wife.
for the wife. Maybe that was a dumb moment too, guys, but I just thought, well, that's fascinating that servant girls were trained to be midwives. So I wonder who was their midwife then. But okay, that's not in there. So, so what is the result of all four of these marriages? Children and the tribes of Israel. Yeah, now you're way ahead of us, Bertha, but absolutely. That's why it's so important. And we have 11 we have 11 so far, but the 12th is on the way. So there are so far 11 sons born to these four women, and then one daughter is mentioned. There may be more daughters, but that daughter is mentioned because she's pertinent to future stories. Thank you, Jacob. I don't have a clock. Is there any chance I could have a clock? Because otherwise we may still be here at 1 o'clock, Jacob. You don't want that. So, okay. So anyway, we see all these children being born, but what's going on between the sisters? Jealousy. Jealousy is the best way to put it. The jealousy becomes a rivalry, but let's just get to the bottom of it. It's because of their jealous spirits toward each other. And you know what? You can't blame them there, can you? That's Jacob and Laban's fault. So what's going on between Jacob and Laban?
Well, she's a little bit more in control and tells who can sleep with who when.
Okay, that's Leah or Rachel.
Now.
No, Laban.
Oh, that's the father-in-law. Well,
Yeah.
He's a schemer.
Schemer, okay.
Yeah, and he has it all planned out.
He is a schemer, and he's got a lot planned out. And who is Laban trying to bless the most? Laban. Right. So, and we need to see that as we go into this lesson today.
So you remember the brother that was also kind of in that same camp that wanted to have everything?
So are you talking about when Rebecca was there or Esau?
No. They didn't have a brother?
Not that we know of, but Laban is mentioned as the brother when Isaac goes to get Rebecca. Laban is Rebecca's brother.
Okay.
So now he's the uncle. See, because, yeah, but he's the brother from before who wanted all the goodies, so, okay. Okay, so let's talk about this now. We'll go on to the lesson here. It says here, Jacob's family is growing, and so are his flocks. He remains in Paddan Aram. And how does this fit with God's promises in Genesis 28:13 through 15? Will he and his family live forever away from the promised land? Now, if you looked up that verse, you realize that in Genesis 28, verses 13 through 15, Jacob was told, I will give you and your descendants a land on which you are lying. That was the land around Bethel, not this land in Paddan Aram. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All people on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. And then he says, I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. Now that promise, like I said, was in Bethel. Any of you have been to Israel, you might have been to, as we call it, Bethel. And it is, it's definitely a city in Jerusalem, in Israel today. But the promise was that Jacob might be going to this other land to look for wives, but he's going to be brought back. God gave him a promise. And God didn't say to Jacob, your seed will come back. He said, you will come back, that I will bring you back to this land. So Jacob is still here when we're in chapter 31. He's still here in Paddan Aram, or the land of Haran, whichever you want to call it. And so we're seeing that he's got to leave, because this is not the land God promised him. God promised him the other land. So let's read these verses here and get some perspective. And one of the things I want to tell you that Jacob has lived here now for 20 years. Think about that. 14 for his wives, another 6 of work. 20 years, and he is probably about 97 years old. So I want you to think about that. If any of you are feeling a little old right now, you can rest assured, I don't think we have any 97-year-olds in class here. I'm pretty sure.
And he's still having babies.
And he was still yes, he's still having kids. So we, little pain going on back there. So we recognize that things were a little bit different then in their physical abilities than they are today. So, okay, we're going to read Genesis 31, verses 1 through 21. Jacob heard that Laban's sons were saying, Jacob has taken everything our father owned and has gained all this wealth from what belonged to our father. Uh-oh. And Jacob noticed that Laban's attitude toward him was not what it had been. Then the Lord said to Jacob, go back to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you. So Jacob sent word to Rachel and Leah to come out to the fields where his flocks were. He said to them, I see that your father's attitude toward me is not what it was before, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that I've worked for your father with all my strength. Yet your father has cheated me by changing my wages 10 times. However, God has not allowed him to harm me. If he said the speckled ones will be your wages, then all the flocks gave birth to speckled young. And if he said the streaked ones will be your wages, then all the flocks bore streaked young. So God has taken away your father's livestock and has given them to me. In breeding season, I once had a dream in which I looked up and saw that the male goats mating with the flock were streaked, speckled, or spotted. The angel of God said to me in the dream, Jacob. I answered, here I am. And he said, look up and see that all the male goats mating with the flock are streaked, speckled, or spotted, for I have seen all that Laban has been doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and where you made a vow to me. Now leave this land at once and go back to your native land. Then Rachel and Leah replied, do we still have any share in the inheritance of our father's estate? Does he not regard us as foreigners? Not only has he sold us, but he has used up what was paid for us. Surely all the wealth that God took away from our father belongs to us and our children. So do whatever God has told you. Then Jacob put his children and his wives on camels, and he drove all his livestock ahead of him, along with all the goods he had accumulated in Paddan Aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. When Laban had gone to shear his sheep, Rachel stole her father's household gods. Moreover, Jacob deceived Laban the Aramean by not telling him he was running away. So he fled with all he had, and crossing the river, he headed for the hill country of Gilead. Okay, lots of verses they give us in this book, but we're going to go through it. So what indications are there that it is time for Jacob to move? God told him. I want you to look at that one first. There's more. But I do want you to look at that in verse 3. Then the Lord said to Jacob, and then God says something to him. And what clearly does God say?
Go back to the land of your father.
Go back to the land of your fathers. This is not a suggestion. This is not a, hey, when you got time or when you feel like it. He is saying to him very clearly as a command, it's time. Go back to your land, to the land of your fathers and to your relatives. And not only does he give him that command, but he also gives him a promise with it. What does he say? I will be with you. So think about that here. God is not asking Jacob to do something and then saying, you're on your own, figure it out. He is basically saying to Jacob, it's time. You need to go. Hey, no problem.
Does anyone in here drive a red Nissan Rogue that's parked over here? Tammy said that the windows are down and it's starting to rain and I don't want your stuff to get wet.
Oh, a red Nissan Rogue.
That's you?
Your windows are down.
It's okay, but we don't want your stuff to get wet.
You're okay with it?
I'm gonna put
Oh, the puppy's in there. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're seeing that God is promising you need to make the trek. It's time, but not to worry. I'm going to be with you. Jacob seems to go back and forth on that a little bit. But so that's the one thing we can take comfort in. But there's problems going on. So backing up, who's giving him problems?
Laban's son.
The sons are the whole family's starting to weigh in on this, aren't they? And the sons are actually accusing Jacob of something. What is it? Gain. Yep, it's all Jacob's fault that we ain't got nothing no more, you know? It's not our fault. We're working hard. Jacob has taken it all. In fact, they even make it sound as if he has stolen it. Now, we've been reading the narrative. We know what Laban has done, and we're going to see farther on what's gone on. But the sons are chips off the old block, and so they're going to blame Jacob for their misfortune. And they're saying that not only has he taken everything, but he's gained all this wealth from what he's taken. So they're not giving Jacob any credit for any wisdom. What I love about this is God comes back, and I want you guys to look at this carefully. So Jacob's hearing these accusations. And I used to tell my kids this, that sometimes when somebody is accusing you of something, you need to look and see what about it might be true. And then take what's true and reject everything else. So I want you to look at this carefully. Jacob might be thinking, oh dear, well, have I really done this? Because remember, he had the whole thing about setting up the poplar and about the birch trees and all this crazy stuff. And we were saying that we know in modern world that looking at speckled trees doesn't make your goat speckled, but yet it was happening with him. But if you look at verse 11, and I want you to see this, who comes to Jacob?
The angel of God.
Okay, now it says the angel of God, and if you ever wonder who that is, because it could be different, it could be something different, but this very clearly says in verse 13, what does it say? I am the God of Bethel. In case you were wondering who that angel was, you can learn it in verse 13. You can see that it is God. And as Sherry just pointed out, this is what would be called a pre-incarnate being of Jesus. So Jesus comes to man as a human being born as a baby. But prior to that, he shows up a lot of times in the Old Testament, and he's called the angel of God. But here's the beautiful thing about it. We know, again, this Jesus is God because he says, I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and where you made a vow to me. Remember when you go back to Genesis 28 and you see that Jacob is making a vow, it's very clearly he is making it to the God who promised him that land. So, all that to say, if Jacob is feeling like, why are these brothers saying this about me? He can look carefully and see what God is saying to him. And God is saying, I'm the one who gave that to you. He clearly speaks it in verse 12 where he says, where the male goats are mating and the speckle and all that, I am the God. I am the one who gave this to you. So it's just a cool thing for us to recognize that there wasn't truth in what the brothers were saying. So
I think Laban is a very moody employer, and that he's very difficult to work for. And I think that they needed some HR to oversee that because I think he was taking advantage of Jacob.
absolutely he was. What kind of boss does what he's done?
I would have quit a long time ago.
Right. And it's interesting that Jacob doesn't quit a long time ago. I don't think he's a real namby-pamby type of guy. Yeah.
Can you just sort of remember what Jacob has done?
Okay.
Okay, so in his inside, he knows I might deserve this a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, think
Okay.
about it.
Well, and I think she's got a point here. Because remember, God is coming to him at Bethel. We studied a few weeks ago. And God is saying, I'm with you. You need to go to this land. You need to find a wife. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to bring you back. and he hasn't heard yet that he was supposed to go back. So, in dealing with his own regrets, his own sorrow, maybe over what he's done, maybe he's thinking, I need to wait till God calls me back. I dare not go yet. So, I think there could be something there. And that's why he hasn't left Laban, because he's like, I guess I'm supposed to be here. Do you ever feel like you're in a situation that you deserve and it's kind of a mess? Yeah, and maybe that's exactly what Jacob is feeling like. So food for thought anyway. So why does Jacob have to go back to his homeland?
Because that's what God told him to do.
That's what God told him to do, and I love that, and that should be the bottom line. But why is God telling him to go back there?
This is the land he had promised him and his descendants.
This is the land God had promised to him and his descendants. And for 20 years, he's lived in another land. He's got the descendants, but he doesn't have the land. So we're seeing that Jacob has got to go back after this 20 years. There was just a little thing that one of the commentators said, but he said sometimes it's hard to know, when you're supposed to move into another location or take another job or take a step of decision. And he was saying that Jacob has the best points here for moving on. He had a desire to leave because things weren't going well. But God spoke to him to leave too. And thirdly, the circumstances worked. His wives wanted to go. I mean, he's got the whole picture here that it's okay for him to move on, to take this step. So anyway, just interesting for us to see here. I remember I told you before that you always tie in the chapters. One of the things I wanted you to see in chapter 30, verse 43, it says, in this way the man, that's Jacob, grew exceedingly prosperous, came to own large flocks, maidservants, men servants, camels, and donkeys. And then Jacob heard that Laban's sons were saying, Jacob has taken everything. So tie your chapters together. You see that Jacob is becoming an incredibly wealthy man. And that also was a promise from God. So how do Rachel and Leah respond to this? Yep. Okay, let's go. Basically.
How they have lost their inheritance.
Yeah.
The father didn't care for them.
It appears as if their father doesn't even care about them at all. And they mentioned that their father had used up all their inheritance. So I'm thinking that whatever Jacob had brought to it, Laban had long used up. Makiba, hi.
Hi. It seems like maybe since he's been there for like 20 years, that also what was creeping up on him were the idolatry there as well. So I'm thinking, gee, God wanted him out of there.
Yeah.
Because after 20 years.
That is a valid point that we haven't brought up yet, but there does appear to be idolatry going on here. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi,
Good morning. At first, I was going like, where is he getting the money to buy the cattle and whatnot? Then I realized after the 14 years, then he went ahead and was taking care and raising Laban. How do you say his name?
Laban.
Laban's cattle. So he was getting paid with that, and so that's why he accumulated so much.
Remember how he made the deal?
Right.
That I need to be paid and then they're doing this deal, but I'll take the worst stuff. Only the worst stuff became the best stuff. Yeah. So, and with that increased his wealth. So then he was able to buy other things like camels and servants and things like that. Yeah. Oops. Nope. Hold this a minute. This is what happens when you don't have pockets.
Technical corrections.
Uh-huh.
But he was being deceptive still, because like in verse 42, it said when he was determining which cattle was his and which were Laban's, he gave Laban the feeble ones and himself the strong ones.
Right. Well, what he did, look at it carefully, he moved away the breeding so that the feeble ones were away from the breeding. Yeah, and then they ended up being the ones without the speckles and all that. Yeah. So yes, you're right, but he did it like creatively.
I would say not totally transparent.
Okay, good point. Yeah. So, okay. Anybody else? So I'm losing my microphone here. I gotta get pockets in my pants. I dare not say more because I know we're on the thing. Okay. Anyway, back to this. So, why do you think Jacob consulted with Rachel and Leah? Come on, ladies. Happy wife, happy life.
That's right.
Right? He wanted to make sure they were in agreement with him. How hard would it be traveling as far as they're going to go with 4 unhappy wives? Well, 2 really mattered. They were chief wives, the other were lesser wives. But yeah, he wanted them on board, and they're very on board, which is really amazing. It almost as if Sherry's version, we thought you'd never ask Jacob. We want out of here. We got nothing, So now there's an interesting thing, and I have to get my phone for this because I don't know how to do things, how to print things, because I'm no good at anything when it comes to technology. So I did this on my camera. I took a picture of the page so that I could look at this, and I thought this was kind of fascinating. Do you think this is pretty techie, huh? Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, there's a thing called the Newsy tablets, N-U-Z-I. Not newsy as in newsy boys, but Newsy, N-U-Z-I. They were discovered in 1925 from about 1500 BC, and they were found east of Haran, this area where Jacob is with his family, east of that a little ways. But anyway, they said that if you owned the teraphim of the family, that meant you were the leader of the family. That by owning the idols, you were the leader of the family. It was very fascinating because this was not understood. So they found 4,000 clay tablets with different rules on them. I'm not going to read you all 4,000 of them, but a few that were, yeah, we have time. They also said that the teraphim, so those are those family or household idols, could be set along the boundaries of your land and no one could cross it. So see, they had a lot more significance than something you were going to pray to. I'm not suggesting this is okay at any level. I'm saying the understanding of those days, what was the one who owns the teraphim runs the family. And there also was an interesting thing that was also in this somewhat adding to the story, is that if you were a good enough wife, you could attain sisterhood. Yeah, I think that's a little weird, but I'm just saying that perhaps that's why Abraham and Isaac both felt they could say their wives were their sisters, even though their motives were to save their own skin. But the idea was that the sisters, if you were a good enough wife, you could be the sister, which would give you rights of inheritance. So that's what makes this a little bit interesting, these Newsy tablets, that they would tell this story so many centuries later. 100 years ago they found these, but they explained then why Rachel might have stolen the idols. One of two things. She could have thought it gave her preeminence, or she could have thought she was going to give them to Jacob, that Jacob would be, in other words, the ruler of the family. And no way could Laban come after him because he owned the magic idols. You know, it's not a healthy religious thing, but it does explain things. Oh, I don't know how many there were.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't know.
because he must have kept track of them.
Yeah, he must have
She couldn't
kept.
only had 1 or 2 in her little pack.
She couldn't have had hundreds of them.
You would know every single one of them if you had hundreds.
I don't know that there were hundreds of them. Why do you think there might have been hundreds of them? Maybe. I don't know. Yeah. All I know is she has what he wanted, what Laban wanted. And I think that was just so fascinating to me because that was like, oh, that might be why she took them. And I would say that's why she took them because that was the law of the land then where they came from. I'll come around.
I think probably it's interesting to me that the first thing she said when he said we're going is, well, what about my estate? What about Dad owes us all this stuff?
Right.
So she took the idols because that's what they were owed.
Yeah, I think that the girls were, you know, their father's daughters. And so in a sense, they might be thinking, well, we got nothing, so let's just go because you got plenty. And Rachel is thinking, well, you know what, I got an idea. So back here and then, yeah.
Mine's more of a question.
Okay.
Were certain idols better than others?
Well, that's a good point. All of them were worthless.
Well, yeah, but I realize that.
I know.
But to them,
I'll-
or to
I
to
would
Rachel,
say so, yeah.
or Laban.
It must have been something that the head of the family had, and that's why she decided to take it. So there might have been gazillion other ones, but these certain ones were the proof of ownership of the family, leader of the family. Yeah, that, and I'm only getting this from what I read. They're all worthless, so.
I was just thinking it couldn't have been that many because in verse, where was it? I just had it. She was sitting on them.
Yeah, exactly.
Said she put them in her bag and said, "Oh, it's my time."
Right, right,
So
I know.
how many are you going to sit on?
How many can you fit in a camel's thing? Okay. Oh, sorry. Hey. Oh, they believe they were made out of like a terracotta stone. Oh. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure they fell apart after a while. Right? I'm real sure they did. Okay, I'm making my way. I love it that you guys love these stories.
So I looked him up. So it says,
Okay, good.
Rachel's theft in Genesis 31. Rachel steals her father's Laban's teraphim to prevent him from using them to find the family.
Oh, so that was one of the things too, huh? Yeah, I'm sure that's how he felt. Yeah.
So my question was, before Jill said what she said, did Rachel steal the gods so that her father would no longer be head of the family, and or did she steal them because she wanted to gain sisterhood?
Okay, I would say probably the answer to that is yes. According to their tradition, there seems to be something there about gaining control of the family, which would be by having the household gods. I'm going to give you a plan C, though, another idea that went in my head. The other idea would elevate her. If her husband's elevated, she's elevated. Okay, I'll give you my third idea in a minute.
Okay, well, I thought when you said the newsy thing,
Right.
one thing that also seemed interesting about it, I always wondered, how did she sneak back and get the images? But it says that Laban, when he went to shear his sheep,
Right.
he saw that Rachel had stolen them. So I wonder if they were marking the boundaries of his territory, as you described a moment ago.
Perhaps.
So she just maybe took the ones that they were running across as they fled.
And the ones that were the most important to her for what she had in mind. I want to give you a third idea because she would know. Oh, sorry, Sherry. Because you might have my third idea. So let's see.
I don't.
Oh, okay.
I was just, in one of my commentaries, they talked about the legal significance of the household idols.
Right.
And it said they were passed down to an heir. The person who received them could rightfully claim the greater part of the family inheritance.
There, right, correct. Yeah, so see, at every level you're seeing that by Rachel taking these, she believed that according to the Newsy law, she would then be the chief inheritor and therefore in charge of the family. I want to just throw another wrinkle out there, which I want to believe, okay, but don't build doctrine on this. I want to believe she wanted to show her dad how ridiculous this was, and she wanted to take something that was valuable to him because he had treated them lousy. And so that was one of my thoughts, was even based on everything we're reading about the law, perhaps all she thought was, you know what, you cheated us out of everything. I'm going to take what's most valuable to you. Because let's face it, Laban at every level appears to be very drawn to what makes him great, whether it's inheritance or crops or, animals or descendants. And we'll get into this pretty soon. He wanted to be the one who owned it all. So maybe all she wanted to do was make him feel worthless. I just want to throw that out there because Rachel is one of, Jacob's wives, and I want to think that she knew who the true God was. But still, it's not right for her to have done this. But all of these things, I think, are fascinating, don't you think, when you look at the culture of that day, what it was? Sherry?
Didn't want to give up her pagan ideas.
And there's that maybe she didn't want to give up her pagan ideas.
Thought that there was a chance that she thought that she would be protected on the journey if she took the idol.
There is that belief, too, that she might have thought she would be protected on the journey, that as those idols were marking out the property for her dad, they would now mark out the property for her family. So I found this thing on Lessons from Rachel's Hidden Idols, that there is a danger of clinging to the past, that Rachel she might have had a lingering attachment to her upbringing and the religious practices of her father's household, that even as she journeyed with Jacob toward a new life under God's covenant, she secretly held on to symbols of the old life. Another thought is idolatry can be subtle. Even if she did take it to punish her dad, she was putting significance on those idols that she should not have had. And this bred complication because she's hiding them, and lie leads to lie leads to lie. But God is protecting Jacob's family even through her lie and her scheming, as we see he's done all along. So
I kind of think also too, like us as mothers, we're the ones that teach our children more so.
Yeah.
And maybe she thought, I don't know, her mind frame, but hey, how am I going to teach my kids if I don't have an idol with me? So to make their religion go on in their family.
which is very sad. One of the things she did reinforce, I'd say, in her children is that deception is the way to go. Because as we see later on, we'll read farther through Genesis, deception is a way of life for this family. So, okay, we want to keep moving here, but a couple of things I did want you to see is Jacob was, and somebody mentioned it back there, that in verse 20, Jacob deceived Laban, the Aramean, by not telling him he was running away. This was not right of Jacob. And God calls it out through his Holy Spirit here in Genesis 31, verse 20, that this was a deception. Jacob should have. Now, all of us can sit here and say, but we don't blame him, right? But it doesn't make deception right. So the end does not justify the means. Then it says he fled with all he had and crossed the river. Do any of you have a footnote that tells you what river that is? Euphrates River. Very good. And he headed for the hill country of Gilead. Okay, so there's a whole lot there. Hopefully we covered it well. I think two basic reasons he left. There was unrest in his family, and God told him to. So that makes it kind of easy. So, okay. One thing I just want to always bring up here, and I know I'm sounding like I'm beating a dead horse, but I want you guys to see this. Jacob is promised a little more than Abraham and Isaac were. Abraham and Isaac were given this broad promise of a land, of many, many descendants, of, as far as sand of the shore and stars in the sky, so many descendants. That's what they were given. Abraham had one descendant of promise. Remember, that would be Isaac. He had lots of descendants. Okay, just a minute. But Abraham got this very broad, very general promise, specific enough to tell him where the land was. But does Abraham ever own any of the land? No. Okay, then Isaac gets the promise of the same thing, the land, generations of people. Now, instead of having the one child of promise, at first Isaac appears to have two. But God says, that's not what I had in mind. It is the one, Jacob. We are funneling, remember, as we did all along in Genesis, we are funneling. And we have funneled down to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But now it's going to start spreading. And I wanted you to see a little bit of a difference here in that in Isaac got the blessing in 28 verse 3, but Jacob got an added blessing of having a community of people who would inherit the land, and that his community of people would inherit the land, and that's 28 verse 4. That is different than what the others got. They got more of a nebulous, you're going to get the land someday. Jacob actually got the promise that you would have a community of people who will actually live in the land. And with 12 sons, he's got a pretty good start here, doesn't he? And so this is very important. And I'm again, after 20 years, I've lived here in Ripon 30 years, and 32, I guess. But anyway, I don't have any calling to go back to my old country, which would be Southern California. But anyway, I'm not called to go back there. But Jacob lived there 20 years. Now, 20 years is a lifetime. And yet it wasn't, because God said, this is not your home. You have to go back. And so when we wonder about Israel and the land, don't forget that part.
Sherry, back to the,
Hold it. Thank
okay, okay. Back to the Laban and his idols that he had. We were just talking here, and we're thinking about like today's time. We have idols too, that that we have possessions and things. And here's my little idol, like maybe right there and stuff.
Your
That
telephone is
we-
your idol. Okay.
Yeah, like we kind of
She said it, I did.
substitute,
Okay.
things for the Lord, for things that we have instead of being in the Word or something. I don't know. That was,
Now give it to Brittany.
Oh, it's an apple. Oh, and there's a bite out of it.
Yeah.
that's why I put an OtterBox on mine, because I don't see the apple.
That's kind of good, isn't it? I never thought of that apple as having the bite out of it and how it's become so many people's idols. Yeah, that's really interesting. So, yeah, people have idols today too. Jacob did too, his pride.
If Jacob had not left suddenly, and he then was with Laban they were together, and he was telling him, I'm leaving, what would have happened then? I mean, Laban would have done all kinds of stuff to keep him.
Oh, absolutely. So here's the thing about that, Sherry, and I think it's so fascinating because we do this all the time. I do it. I'm not going to talk about you. Often I think to myself, well, God promised this, so here's what I'll do to make it work. Instead of letting God make it work, because do you suppose that God would have called Jacob out of this land and then said, but I need you to cheat Laban out of this? He wouldn't have done it that way. He would have made a way. Now, we as human beings, I'm not faulting Jacob because I'm Jacob, but I think so often we do that where we're thinking, I've done this, I'm with my children and grandchildren where, God made this promise and I'm going to make sure they hear it over and over and over again and beat them into it so good. Yeah. Yeah, we really do feel like we have to help God. And I think that's what's going on here is Jacob got the message. His wives confirmed it. He had the desire. And then he's saying, now let's see how I can make this work, instead of waiting to see how God would make it work. And the only reason why I come down on him is because it says in Scripture, Jacob deceived Laban by leaving. So it's not a judgment on my part. God said it. So, but I'm with you, Sherry. I'm like, well, what was he supposed to do? Wait for him to take more from him? And probably the answer would have been they could have had a peaceable time of going instead of all the fear that's going on. 365 times in Scripture, God says, don't be afraid. 365 plus. You guys get the math on that, don't you? Yeah. And yet, how often do you ever go through a day where something doesn't make you fearful, So Jacob was just like us. So I know, but they can't hear you.
Don't you think that before Jacob left, there must have been lots of friction going on to even get him to that point?
Well, we know that he worked for 14 years for his wives, and then it says he worked another 6, and then the sons are starting to complain. I'm wondering if that 6 years was just a mess, So, Yeah, there had to have been something that made him realize, or make his wives realize, God's not waking them up in the night with a dream, you know, but they were unhappy too. So, yeah, I think there was a lot going on. And I'm not blaming Jacob for taking it into his own hands. I'm saying that's not God's plan, though. So, okay, let's go on to verses 22 through 35. On the third day, now, you guys, I love this because I love the details here. I want you sometime when you're bored to Google how many times on the third day or after 3 days or whatever, you're going to find that in Scripture. And you often find fear, trepidation, pain, not knowing what's going to happen in those 3 days. And of course, what's the most famous one? Jesus. You know, crucified, on the third day he rises from the dead. Think about what his disciples were going through on those 3 days. I'm just studying the book of Esther, and in the book of Esther, she's supposed to go to the king, and she's telling her family, you know, but if I go, he can kill me for showing up there. And she tells the Jewish people to fast for 3 days. In those 3 days, there was pain, there was fear, there was uncertainty about the future. She was as good as dead in her mind. Think of Isaac when Abraham is going to take him up to the mountain to be sacrificed. How many days did they travel? 3 days, you know. You think about that. For 3 days, in Abraham's mind, Isaac was dead. But on the third day, he was resurrected. Not literally, he was not sacrificed. But so often when you see that third day, I want you to insert in there pain, distrust, fear, bad circumstances, and that you're seeing this here. Can you imagine on the third day, Laban was told that Jacob had fled, what Jacob was feeling for those 3 days and what the wives were? He ran away for a reason. He was afraid of Laban. So on the third day, Laban finally comes in from shearing the sheep, my take on it. He was told that Jacob had fled. Taking his relatives with him, he pursued Jacob for 7 days and caught up with him in the hill country of Gilead. I want you to realize that Jacob is traveling with a large group. He's booking it if he got 7 days away, or 10 days actually. So, yeah. Then God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream at night and said to him, "Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad." Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country of Gilead when Laban overtook him, and Laban and his relatives camped there too. Then Laban said to Jacob, now I just want you to picture that though a minute, you guys, okay? So this is the hillside of Gilead. Jacob is tented there, campground, not glamping over here, ladies. He's tenting it, and they've got 11 kids plus, because he's with men servants, maid servants, cattle, donkeys, goats, sheep. This is not a little encampment, just the 11 kids alone. And so they're parked there. And maybe even they've been basically running for 10 days. And they're stopped, they're camped. And they're camped there, they wake up the next morning and, oh no, there's another group camped here. I mean, have you ever had it when you've been camping and you wake up the next morning and there's a tent right next to yours, or a trailer, and you're like, when did they come in, you know? Well, picture this, okay? I'm not saying it was that close, but picture them waking up in the morning and saying, oh no, Laban has arrived. Oh no, now what do we do? I mean, talk about fear, talk about how do we handle this? So, okay, so Laban and his relatives camped there. Now, those are probably his kids and servants. Then Laban said to Jacob, what have you done? You've deceived me, and you've carried off my daughters like captives in war. Why did you run off secretly and deceive me? Why didn't you tell me so I could send you away with joy and singing to the music of tambourines and harps? Yeah, they would have had a party. Oh, yeah. You didn't even let me kiss my grandchildren and my daughters goodbye. I love this. You have done a foolish thing. I have the power to harm you. But last night, the God of your father said to me, I think this is where you could put a but God in. I have the power to harm you, but God came to me and said, be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. Now you have gone off because you long to return to your father's house. But why did you steal my gods? Jacob answered Laban, I was afraid because I thought you would take your daughters away from me by force. But if you find anyone who has your gods, he shall not live. In the presence of our relatives, see for yourself whether there is anything of yours here with me, and if so, take it. Now Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the gods. So Laban went into Jacob's tent. Now I want you to see this, okay? Remember I talked about this newsy, the laws? And so whose tent does he go into first? The leader of the family, because that's where he's assuming the gods will be, because to transfer leadership. So he goes into Jacob's tent first. No luck. Then where does he go first? First wife. Remember? Leah's first wife. Leah's tent, and into the tent of the two maidservants, but he found nothing. Now I'm wondering why he waited till the last to go into Rachel's tent. But after he came out of Leah's tent, he entered Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the household gods and put them inside her camel's saddle and was sitting on them. Laban searched through everything in the tent but found nothing. Rachel said to her father, don't be angry, my lord, that I cannot stand up in your presence. I'm having my period. So he searched but could not find the household gods. Now, I don't know how the men in your family are, but if the men in my family, if some woman would say to them, they'd be like, oh, just leave me alone. Oh, I'm out of here. They just don't like to hear that stuff. So, but maybe Laban was different, but she knew what to do. So why does Laban claim he's pursuing Jacob, and what is his intent?
He wanted this, have the closest with his daughters and grandchildren that he had taken away from him, Jacob had taken away.
Okay, so Laban is claiming that he wants his children and grandchildren around him. He's like, well, I love them. I want them. I want to kiss them goodbye. I want to throw them a party, all that. But what do we know is his reason for chasing Jacob?
Jacob made him rich.
Right. Jacob made him rich. And he had the idols. So a couple of things here again. Go back to this law. So he is basically saying, Jacob, you're trying to steal the leadership of our family from me, along with all of the wealth I've given you and the children and grandchildren I've given you. He's basically saying to Jacob, you're trying to take everything away from me that's rightfully mine. It's all a lie. Why is it a lie? Why are the children not his? Because they're God's. Okay, that's good. That's a bottom line answer. Why else? Say that again. He legally sold his daughters to Jacob. He went through the process. He worked 7 years for Rachel, got Leah, got Rachel then, and worked 7 more years. So he went through the process, a legally binding contract in those days, to marry these women. He got the wives, he got the children from the women. How did he get the livestock?
From Jacob.
Okay, with the speckled and stripes, he made a deal with Laban, and Jacob made a deal, and Jacob legally got all of this from him. Now, we know God superseded all of those genetic issues and gave Jacob the blessing, but everything that Laban is saying, including the gods, Jacob didn't take those either. So honestly, the whole thing's a lie from Laban. Laban doesn't know all of it's a lie, but he has manufactured the whole thing. But doesn't it tell you a lot about Laban's attitude toward life and his family and his everything? He really thinks he's all that. And one of the things I think that's very fascinating, he says, I have the power to harm you. he believed, now, if Jacob's 97, it's almost funny, Laban has got to be probably about 40 to 60 years older than that, because remember, he's the one who came out to meet Isaac, Rebecca, the servant for Rebecca. So we're got to put at least probably 60 years onto that, because Isaac was 60 when the twins were born. So so you're talking about a 97-year-old versus a 157-year-old. I mean, I know times were different then. People lived longer lives, but these guys aren't exactly teenagers, and one's going to harm the other one. So anyway, it's just a fascinating story.
You know what was really interesting to me was that he was going after his gods. That was his excuse, but I think it was more that he deceived him, and he wanted the ownership, and he wanted the power. The more people he had underneath him, the more power he had. But what really kind of tickled my brain was that when God came to him, he knew it was God.
Yeah.
He knew
Laban knew it. He did, didn't he? Yeah. Sure.
Okay, my question is, what is it about the speckled and the striped livestock that was this like not acceptable? And the reason why
I'm going to talk to my livestock specialist here. Mary, what would happen if a bunch of raised cows ended up speckled when he figured they were black?
That somebody screwed them.
Yeah, that would be negative. Because if you are breeding for a certain way and they all turn out a different way, somebody's been messing with your heifers. You've got a bull in there or a goat ram that's no good or whatever. But God superseded that and made Jacob strong and healthy. And so it was a miracle here. I mean, people want to say, oh, maybe genetics were different then. I don't believe in evolution, so I think what is true now genetically was true then genetically, and striped have striped, and you can have a mutant gene or whatever, that pops up all of a sudden, right? Isn't that what a red Angus is? Yeah, and they start, building on that, but that's not the norm. So I believe this was a miracle of God overriding the genetic system.
And then he shows Jacob has a dream.
Yeah, right.
And the dream shows him that.
Yeah, God was controlling this whole thing. Yes, and that's really the bottom line of this. There's no human answer for this that really works, but God had an answer.
Out of reading this whole story, the most fascinating thing, as Becky had brought up to me, was how God had spoke to Laban, right? And we sit around and we're waiting to hear from God. And when God speaks, we will hear.
Boy, he made sure Laban heard, didn't he?
Yeah.
Because I don't think they were in the practice of talking a lot. I could be wrong.
But no, I just kind of related to myself, because I'm sitting here, I'm like, I want to hear from God. Well, when God's ready for me to hear from him, I'm going to hear from him. So.
And here's the other part of that, though. I don't know that Laban normally heard from God. So God is going to make sure Laban hears, and he's going to make sure I hear, but sometimes I'm not willing to listen. And that's why I'm not hearing. Maybe? Maybe not with you. Maybe just me.
Too, is that Laban knew that God had spoken to him, but yet he wanted to show Jacob that I heard from you, your God, and I could kill you.
That's a very
But
interesting
he really
point.
recognized that was not what he was to do.
So Laban maybe is trying to throw his trump card a little bit, saying, well, I've heard from God too, and if it weren't for God, you'd be a dead man right now. So anybody else? Just it's a really quite a deep story here of God intervening in the livestock, in the dreams, in the movements, in catching it, the whole thing. You're seeing our great sovereign God has a plan for Jacob and his family. And that plan is going to supersede all the sins along the way. And there's a lot of them here, because even though Jacob hears from God, he deceived Laban by leaving. Even though Laban hears from God, he says, I could kill you if I wanted to. And what's funny to me too, because verse 24, God says to Laban, be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. Now I'm sitting there thinking as I'm reading this, I guess this is one of those define good or bad, because I don't think what Laban is saying is so wonderful. I feel like Laban didn't obey God, but maybe he was going to say way worse. I don't know, So maybe he pulled it back a little bit. But I'm thinking that he didn't obey. Yeah.
Was he not to speak to him at all? I mean, I don't understand that.
Yeah, good question, Mary. Mary asked, is it possible he wasn't speak to him at all? But maybe he could have started off a little differently. Maybe he could have just said something like, why did you run off? No, that's not good or bad. That's asking a question. Or maybe he could have said, maybe he could have even led with, I just wanted to kiss everybody goodbye. I mean, it could have been a flat out lie, but at least it's not good or bad, So I don't know. But I don't think he was supposed to threaten him and say, I could have hurt you bad, So, but we'll leave that to God and Laban to iron out themselves. So, but he does say, now look carefully at verse 29. Laban says this, last night, the God of, look, what does it say? Your father. He doesn't say God, the Lord. Remember, we've talked about the differences of what those words can mean. The Lord, capital L, small capital O, capital R, capital D, is Yahweh, the covenant-keeping God. He's not talking about that one. He's just saying the God of your father. There's no personal application here. Yet he recognized who he was. Fascinating, huh? So he said, be careful not to say anything. And it says, you long to return to your father's house. But he does zoom in with the very first question is, why'd you steal my gods? So I do think, and then when we see in Joshua, I think it's 24. Oh, I wrote it down somewhere. Joshua 24:2, I think. Somebody maybe can tell me if I'm wrong here. But that was supposed to be where we see that Abraham came from a idol worshiping group of people. And so is that correct? Thank you. So we're seeing that this goes back to, remember, this is where Abraham was from, where Laban is. Idol worshiping was part of that. Abraham got called out of that, but obviously some of that was still left there. But yet they recognized the God of Jacob's father. Keep in mind also in Hebrew, father can mean grandfather. They don't have those breakdown in words. So he could be talking about the God of Abraham, could have been talking about the God of Isaac, but he wasn't talking about the God before Abraham, because that would not have been the God we're talking about here. Does that make sense to you guys? Because they were idol worshiping before the God of Abraham got in there. Okay, so I don't know where we are in the questions, but this is kind of a personal one. How does God's intervention encourage you? Do you see any encouragement here where God steps in, stops Laban from doing any harm to Jacob? Why did God have to stop Laban from doing any harm to Jacob? I want you to think about this. Why?
Jacob is going to carry on all of our descendants.
So Jacob is going to carry on the promises of God. And we got to have Jesus where this is going to come. So whose reputation is at stake? God's.
Well, you said we could always put Jesus.
You can, yes, Bertha. You can put Jesus in too. Right. Whenever you don't know the answer, you put Jesus in the middle of it. And that's true, because that's true here too. Jesus is God. But do you see whose reputation is at stake here? That's why God had to call Jacob out. That's why God had to protect Jacob from Laban, because God's reputation to keep his promises is at stake, which always happens. God doesn't ever, double negative here, not keep his promises. So God had to stop Laban. He had to call Jacob out because God's word is at stake. God's name is at stake. Everything God promised for eternity is at stake here. And that's why he had to do it. So, okay, if. Okay, that's a good question. Could a person wipe out what God has done? And of course, we know the answer is no. But does that mean people haven't tried? God doesn't have a plan B. What is his plan A? She likes his will. God, but doesn't mean that mankind and through Satan's work hasn't tried to thwart it all the way from Genesis 3 until Revelation 22. We see all the way along. I mean, you look at the Old Testament alone, and this is a perfect story. God promised that his seed would come through Abraham. Well, first through Eve, then through Noah, then through Abraham, then through Isaac, then through Jacob. But you see, this is one of many places where Satan is trying to wiggle in and say, but if I can just get this family destroyed, then plan B would have to take effect. There is no plan B. No. So God always overrides what almost happens, and it doesn't happen.
Right. God is just more powerful than
Yeah.
any Jacob or any Isaac or any Abraham or anything.
Correct. Okay. But humanly speaking, okay, for you and me to pay attention and understand, we have to see that his reputation is at stake over and over and over and over, but he always comes through because Satan can't win. Yeah. But it doesn't, but he's got to prove it over and over again. And does he have to prove it? He does prove it over and over again. So it's just kind of amazing. So how does God's intervention encourage you? Anybody want to take this one as personal? Yeah, Jeannie.
Besides all that good stuff you just said.
Okay.
So our lives can get messy, and part of it can be our fault through, like with Jacob, the deception and various things. He certainly wasn't perfect.
Right.
But God saw him wherever he was, and God was still with him, still personally talked with him. And nothing we do that messes things up is a surprise to God, and nothing we do can overcome his plan that he loves us and he wants good for us. And we may think that there's things that happen that make us in despair, but he's still there and he can still walk us through it.
Right. Isn't that a comfort to know that nothing can really take us outside of his will for us? I often think, and I've said this to you guys before, that little cartoon used to be called Family Circus, it might still be there, where she sends the kid to the grocery store, and the house is here and the store is here. He goes over the fence, through the tree, bumps his leg, scrapes his knee, runs across the street, kicks a ball, dog chases him, ends up at the store. And I often think, it would have been way easier for that kid to go straight to the store. But that's me. I'm the one climbing the fence, going through the trees, going across the street, kicking the ball. And all the way along, there's pain. If I would just do it God's way in the first place, I'd save myself a lot of pain, you know. Or if people around me would do it God's way, they'd save me pain too. I'll blame them.
Yeah, I know I have been in life situations where I have made a decision by myself without consulting God, and things go wrong, and I'm terrified, and I just shut my eyes, and I don't know what to do. When I open my eyes, the other side, God is there, and he saved his day.
That is beautiful. I saw another hand. Oh.
I was got from that may be the reason why Jacob left without confronting or telling Laban was because he didn't want the confrontation. God told him to leave now. No telling what Laban might have done to stop him leaving if he had told him.
Yeah, I get that in using human wisdom. I can see why Jacob left. You know, it's just that it says there that he deceived Laban by not leaving, by leaving secretly.
Because that means that you didn't trust God completely.
He didn't trust God completely.
We all do that, Sherry.
I know it. I can so identify because so often I want to fix it and I have the answer. And I don't need to wait for God because God in his wisdom gave me the answer. But what I do is then I think I've got to be the one giving the answer instead of letting God do his work. And that's what
It seems like he's slow sometimes.
Psalms 37 verse 33 says, is that right? I think it is, yes. But the Lord will not leave them in their power. Oh, I'm going to go to 232. The wicked lie in wait for the righteous, seeking their very lives. That's Laban. But the Lord will not leave them in their power or let them be condemned when brought to trial. You know, God has got his plan and his people taken care of. And I looked at Matthew 10, verses 29 through 31, where it says here, are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground, apart from the will of your Father. And even the very hairs of your head are all numbered. So don't be afraid, you are worth more than many sparrows. And you think God said that about birds. How much more am I worth it to God to wait for his will to be done instead of doing it my way, you know? But God intervened here for Jacob. Maybe God wouldn't have had to intervene if Jacob had waited to leave without sneaking away from Laban. I don't know, but God did intervene. You look puzzled.
Well, you just said kind of what I'm thinking, though. If God says, leave now, it's not like, go tell him that you're leaving so you won't be deceitful. Go now.
Right.
So did he have a chance to go and say his goodbyes? And
we know he did because it says Jacob deceived Laban by not going to him. So that's what we're basing it on. I'm agreeing with you. I think when God said go now, Jacob went now. Whereas, isn't it funny too how we can sometimes change God's commands to fit our preconceived ideas? You know.
Jacob's character is to deceive anyway.
Well, it is Jacob's character.
Part of him.
Yeah.
He deceived his older brother.
Yeah. So this is part of who Jacob is. Again, I'll take things into my own hands because God said it. God promised Jacob the blessing of letting the older serve the younger. Remember, Rebecca got that message? And doesn't matter, does it? They decide to take things into their own hands to make sure it happened. Here again, Jacob is hearing from God, go back to the land of your father and your relatives, and I will be with you. Jacob heard that first part anyway. Go back. Did he hear the I will be with you part? Because he snuck away. Do you see what I'm saying? So often we hear the command without the promise. And the promise is us relying on God. And that's the part we all mess up, I think. And I'm not going to speak for all of you. I'm just going to talk in the mirror. The part that I mess up is when I'm listening to the command, fine, you know, but I'm not doing it the way God would want me to do it because I've decided to do it my way makes more sense than to do it God's way. In Jacob's mind, to go made sense. The second part, I kind of forgot about it. I will be with you. So he decided to take it in his own hands and deceive Laban by not telling him he was running away. See, those are God's words. That's why I can rely on that, not mine. I'm not assuming Jacob deceived Laban. It says he deceived Laban. So therefore, I could look then to see what lesson do I have here. And the lesson is, how often do I listen to the command but do it my way? And that's where problems come in. So, and we're all normal, right? So, okay. Verse 31, what was Jacob afraid Laban was going to do, according to verse 30? Take the kids, take the daughters. He doesn't mention the sheep. So I'll give him some credit here that what matters to him most is his family. I think we see that later on, the way he sends them forward.
Say by force, though.
Yes, by force, yeah, that he was going to steal them from him. Because look at what Laban says to him. Well, we're not there yet, but he basically says, it's all mine. You stole from me, which isn't true, but that's the way Laban sees it. So, okay. Wanted to talk a little bit. We did talk about God's sovereignty, but God protects those who follow his call. Jacob was following God's call, but not looking for the protection. Obedience requires courage. Again, Jacob is obedient, but he left the courage behind and decided to do it his way. Laban repeatedly exploited Jacob, and so Jacob couldn't quite let go of all that toxic part of Laban, and so he runs away in the dark, you know. And I have to say this, Jacob delayed his return to the promised land under, it appears, God's direction. And I think there we really see a positive thing with him, because he could have gone back to the promised land and got all the wealth of Isaac. But instead he was waiting for God's timing. So we're going to give Jacob a check mark on the plus side there. So, but even after conflict, peace can come. It may be an uneasy peace, but we're going to see that peace come in a minute. So any more questions? Well, let's just talk about Rachel a minute. Rachel's deceit bringing danger to her family. Yeah, Candy. Think about this, though. How does Rachel bring danger to her whole family by what she decided there? Okay.
It appears that, you know, when you go against the Lord, I mean, he was doing what he was supposed to do. He was leaving, but he did it on his own terms.
Mm-hmm.
So then you've got one thing where you're just kind of obeying God, but then the next thing, you know, the kicker here, I think, is that Jacob just put the death penalty on his wife, the one that he loved.
Yeah.
And so this whole thing of sin just compounds itself just a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. He did not know, and he was unknowingly put the death penalty on her, but he did.
Well, and I think that's where this question comes in, where it says, how does Rachel's deceit endanger the whole family? Jacob goes and puts the death penalty on this sin, not knowing that his wife's the one who did it. So her deceit caused her husband to basically condemn her to death, or anybody else who's in the family. Jacob was operating under a belief system here that nobody had done this, obviously. No way would he have suggested, you know, they be killed if he knew Rachel had done it. But she created a huge problem here by doing it. I believe she did it to teach her dad a lesson, and perhaps maybe even, like I said, believing this would make Jacob the head of the family. But what's really interesting, what's her reasoning for not getting up? Okay. Remember, in the ancient culture, and it was confirmed in the book of Leviticus, that was a time of uncleanness. And so whether it was true in this culture or God instituted it with the Levitical law, we can't be sure. But I think we can kind of assume this isn't seen as a real pristine time for a woman. Let's just go there. So anyway, she is claiming uncleanness while she's sitting on the ultimate uncleanness. You know, if you think about it, she is sitting on these worthless pieces of stone, you know, and claiming, I can't get up because I'm not, you know, clean. I can't do it. I just thought, how crazy. She's her father's daughter here. She is going to just twist the story a little bit so that she can get what she wants, you know. So, yeah, just crazy. But sin follows sin, doesn't it? I don't know who said it. It's not Shakespeare, even though he's been credited it with. What a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. You know, and that's what's happening here. You've got deception just weaving its way through here. And what a mess now, because her husband just pronounced the death penalty on her. So, anyway. Okay, so let's go on to verses 36 through 55. So, Laban's gone through the whole camp, right? He's searched everything. And I mean, this has got to be an ugly moment. He's coming out of every tent, probably more mad and more mad and more mad because he's not finding it. So he comes out, couldn't find anything. Jacob was angry and took Laban to task. What is my crime, he asked Laban. What sin have I committed that you hunt me down? Now that you have searched through all my goods, what have you found that belongs to your household? Put it here in front of your relatives and mine, and let them judge between the two of us. Don't you love this? He's basically saying, come on, bring out whatever you found. Set it right here in the middle, and let's decide who's the guilty one. You know, well, Laban's empty-handed, so this is not going well for him. I've been with you for 20 years now. Your sheep and goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten rams from your flocks. I did not bring you animals torn by wild beasts. I bore the loss myself. And you demanded payment from me for whatever was stolen by day or night. This was my situation. The heat consumed me in the daytime, and the cold at night, and sleep fled from my eyes. It was like this for the 20 years I was in your household. I worked for you 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flocks, and you changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham and the fear of Isaac, had not been with me, you would surely have sent me away empty-handed. But God has seen my hardship and the toil of my hands, and last night he rebuked you. Laban answered Jacob, the women are my daughters, the children are my children, and the flocks are my flocks. All you see is mine, 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 mine. Sounds like a 2-year-old. Yet, what can I do today about these daughters of mine or about the children they have borne? Come now, let's make a covenant, you and I, and let it serve as a witness between us. So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. He said to his relatives, gather some stones. So they took stones and piled them in a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Laban called it a big word, and Jacob called it Galeed. Laban said, this heap is a witness between you and me today. That is why it was called Galeed. It was also called Mizpah, because he said, may the Lord keep watch between you and me when we are away from each other. If you mistreat my daughters, or if you take any wives beside my daughters, even though no one is with us, remember that God is a witness between you and me. Suddenly, Laban is listening to God. Laban also said to Jacob, here is this heap, and here is this pillar I have set up between you and me. This heap is a witness, and this pillar is a witness, that I will not go past this heap to your side to harm you, and that you will not go past this heap and pillar to my side to harm me. May the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us. So Jacob took an oath in the name of the fear of his father Isaac. He offered his sacrifice there in the hill country and invited his relatives to a meal. After they had eaten, they spent the night there. Early the next morning, Laban kissed his grandchildren and his daughters, and not Jacob, and blessed them. Then he left and returned home. Yeah, oh boy is right. So anyway, what are Jacob's charges against Laban now? What has Laban done to Jacob?
A lot of things.
Mm-hmm. What was that? Cheated him. He absolutely cheated him and cheated him and cheated him. Think of the first cheat, when it was Leah, not Rachel. Yeah, I mean, absolutely, Laban defrauded Jacob of his rightful wife. He did. Right from the get-go, there was deceit going on. But because Laban quickly jumped in with, but you can have Rachel next week. Right. You know, Jacob has not heard from God to return yet to his country. It's only been 7 years at that point. Jacob's willing to stay. He was so in love with Rachel, he's willing to stay, so he stays another 7 years. And then remember, Rachel has Joseph, who's obviously to Jacob the child of promise. God kind of overrides that a little bit. But anyway, Jacob sees Joseph. And if you remember, that's when Jacob said to his family, or said to Laban, let me go now. It was after Joseph was born. He said, can I go now? And Laban says, let's make a deal. And so the deal gets to be this whole striped, speckled goat fiasco and lasts for 6 years. But if you're looking carefully at what he's done to him, he said, they've miscarried. None of them have miscarried. That's kind of amazing. Nor have I eaten rams from your flocks. I guess rightfully he should be able to have one to roast for dinner, or two. He said, when your animals were torn by wild beasts, I bore the loss myself. According to the law, if an animal a wild animal had come, it was up to the employer to take care of it, not the employee. And if anything happened in the daytime, it was the employee's fault. But if it happened at night, it was not. So that's why he's saying that heat consumed me in the daytime, and the cold at night, sleep fled. Whatever was stolen by day or night, he took care of it. Jacob was like the perfect employee, And how did...
He said you demanded.
Yes, he demanded it. Laban was not a nice boss, which is interesting, isn't it? That Jacob seems to, I don't know the facts on this, but it appears that Jacob prospered more than Laban did, which is why the Laban's sons are upset. It appears that Jacob was the one who really prospered so much. And because God did it. He did. He was blessing Jacob all the way. In fact, if you look at verse 42, Jacob makes a profession of faith here. He says, if the God of my father. So I know that's sounding like he's talking about his dad, which he is, but he's also talking that it's his father. So he's basically saying, my dad's God, the one I'm identifying with it finally. The God of Abraham and the fear of Isaac had not been with me. You would surely have sent me away empty-handed. But then he gives credit to God, and he goes, but God has seen my hardship and the toil of my hands. And I love this last line, and last night he rebuked you. I'm thinking that's how he said it. He might have said it nicer than that. But in my way of reading it is he's saying, my God took care of me and he rebuked you. And so, but I think it's good he says it. He's making it clear who's running the show. It's God is, so I love that. So, but then you see Laban's answer, and I think this is really a big deal. He's basically saying, these kids aren't yours, those women aren't yours, and the flocks aren't yours. Laban has nothing to stand on, but he's going to give it one more shot.
He said, all you see is mine.
All you see is mine. Does that not sound like a bragger, a very self-centered, egotistical man? All you see is mine. He's in this foreign land, and all you see is mine. But, now this is what I love. And this is where we see Laban, them concluding. So he says, all you see is mine. Yet, what can I do about these daughters of mine? I can't do anything about it. They want to go with you. So come now, let us make a covenant. What a great idea. What a nice guy. Except look carefully at what this covenant does. So they both put up their stones, right? Remember, where else did Jacob put up a stone? Bethel, where he met God and saw the angels going. So this is, and we see Noah did it. We see Abram did it. I don't know that we see Isaac did it, but we see that along the line, they set up stones like a monument, not probably so huge, but it mattered to them. And so Jacob takes the stone and he says, you two get some stones, let's do this. So they pile them in a heap, and Laban gives it this long name. and Jacob calls it Galeed. Now, do you see what that word means? It's deep. It means heap. I don't know. I was looking for something greater than that. And everything I came up with, the stones or heap or pillar, it's not like some deep meaning. But then they named it Mizpah also. Now, here's where you get what the purpose of this heap was. Because what does Mizpah mean? Watchtower, right, or to watch over. So suddenly there's another meaning here. It isn't just like remembrance, it's like watchtower. And so let's look at this beautiful verse, 49, which has been completely misconstrued most of the times we read it. In fact, I've heard this at the end of sermons, and you think maybe this isn't the greatest thing to say. May the Lord keep watch between you and me when we are away from each other. It sounds like, oh, may the Lord just watch over you while we're separated. No, what he's really saying is, may the Lord keep you accountable for anything you might be considering doing to me or for me, against me. It is a warning, because if you look at the next verse, if you mistreat my daughters, who had mistreated his daughters? Okay, if you take any wives besides my daughters, who gave the 2 handmaidens to the daughters? So even though no one is with us, remember that God is a witness between you and me. This is not like this happy little phrase. This is a warning. So
I just have a question about this mitzvah.
okay,
and
mitzvah.
Mitzvah.
Mitzvah,
Mitzvah.
right, okay.
But you said it meant watchtower.
Right, well, I
And
didn't.
I don't know that I'm supposed to say another denomination, but it's the one that leaves the watchtower
Yeah.
at your doorstep.
Right.
Does that come from here?
It could. There's another place, I believe, in the prophecies where they're talking about being a watchtower of truth.
Okay, so maybe.
Oh, it
That's
could
where
be.
it came from, originated.
Yeah.
The watchtower
Yeah.
literature that you receive.
From the Jehovah Witnesses.
Oh,
They are a cult. They are
Okay.
not a denomination or a
Okay.
religion.
Okay.
So, right.
Cult.
And why are they a cult?
Because they don't look at the Messiah as who the Messiah was. They
Which
don't
is
recognize Jesus
as
God.
correct. They will tell you it's a form of salvation, but not as God. So that's why I don't like to talk about denominations, but we can talk about cults, because that's against Scripture. Yeah. Some denominations are too, probably, but we won't get into that.
I also thought that he said this because he feared his Jacob's God, and said, well, let's make a covenant that your God won't hurt us,
Right.
hurt me or hurt my tribe or whatever,
Yeah.
unless, that type of thing. I think he feared God.
I agree with you, Becky, because if you look at it, it's only words with Laban.
Right.
He's not doing anything. He's only using words to threaten Jacob, but he's not doing anything. So he actually, I think he does fear God. I think that rebuke he got during the night in his dream did a whole lot more than he wants to admit, but he doesn't want to say, I trust your God, because that would be against his personality. So instead he's just going to do this and not do anything. So what was that? I think that's a really good point. He was trying to hold on to pride. I'm going to sound really good, It's a lot like a barking dog. The dog thinks it's all brave and strong till you do that, and then it goes flying, Well, in a way, I think God did that to Laban, So, yeah. So, okay, a couple of things in here. We saw the charges that Laban brought. There was a definition in fear there, and I thought it was kind of good. It's the dread of what God might do. And that really fits here with both Jacob talking about fear and Laban, both of them, because both of them recognize, and I think it took Laban a while, but Jacob knew it. God was capable of great things to create fear. I want you guys to keep in mind that we are not that far off from the flood. Now, it's several hundred years, but remember how long these people lived. So those stories of God's ability to wipe out a world because the world was sinning is still fresh in a lot of the believers' minds, maybe even in the unbelievers' minds. So it's interesting here that they have a healthy fear of what God might do. So who did Jacob say in verse 42 protected him from Laban? Yeah, absolutely. And it's important that he says this, that Laban can recognize that the God who rebuked him is the God Jacob is giving credit to.
And it says the fear of Isaac.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. The fear of Isaac. Anybody have any ideas on what that might mean? Because if you look at it carefully, it's saying, and this is verse 42, if the God of my father, the God of Abraham and the fear of Isaac had not been with me. What do you think that is meaning? In most of the versions that I looked at, fear is capitalized as if it is a person, a proper noun. So who's it? It has to be talking about God. And I think it is basically reminding us that they all, like I just said, recognize what God was capable of doing if they were going to stay in sin. I don't know, Jacob, like I said, he's 97 years old at least. It might have taken him a minute to learn this, I'm thinking, because, yeah, at 97, he seems to have got the hang of it now. But no. Isaac was, they're talking, the fear of Isaac as if it is the God of Isaac. Yeah. In fact, take that word fear and change it to God there, the God of Isaac. It's equating the awe that they have, that Isaac had for God. So it's basically talking, that's who Isaac feared and trusted. It's not saying it's fear of Isaac himself, it's the fear Isaac had, which was God. So how can I change that?
Right, in Deuteronomy 11, 22, no one would be able to stand against you. Okay. No one would be able to stand against you. The Lord your God, as he promised you, will put the terror and fear of you on the whole land wherever you go.
That's a good verse. So it's talking about this fear of God that Isaac had. Not the fear of Isaac himself, but the fear that Isaac had in him for God. I don't know why he singled Isaac out with that. I wish I did. I couldn't find it anywhere. Unless maybe Isaac spoke about it. I don't know. We don't know. We don't have that answer in Scripture. But it's the idea that who Isaac feared, Jacob feared. So over here, right, Carla? Makila.
When I read it, I didn't think that Jacob took God as his own in that sentence.
Okay.
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
that's okay.
It just
you can disagree with me.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that.
No, I can see your point. Because
but I also think that God is. Ooh, you need
that
to eat.
I know I didn't eat breakfast. That was me.
God is strengthening Jacob throughout this whole process. He went through the school of hard knocks with Uncle Laban, and he got his little certificate from him and everything, and now he's just getting closer and closer to God as he goes along now.
Okay, and you know what? I think it's fair what you're saying. We're gonna see where he does in a few minutes, okay? Because he definitely moves in that direction.
I think it is, he has respect for Isaac's position.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very much. Yeah.
That would be it's not fear, it's respect.
Well, and it's about time, because keep in mind why he left his dad in the first place. It was very disrespectful what he had done, so. Okay, but I like, Makiba, we're going to follow through on that, because as we go through this story here of Jacob leaving and him going through all the ways he was mistreated and all of that. And then, you know, he mentions the fear of Isaac. And Makiba mentioned that he doesn't seem strong, and I think she has a valid point. We're going to see him moving here in a more positive way, because notice what happens. Jacob, or Laban, says in verse 53, and I want you to catch this. He's trying to join in on Isaac and the predecessors, the ones who were, you know, ancestors. And so he's saying, may the God of Abraham, that works, the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us. Now, as we saw in Judges 24:2, they were into idolatry. So Laban is not really understanding this whole thing, but he's going to, well, you're going to mention your ancestors, I'll mention mine. So Nahor is the father of Abraham. Yeah. So, I'm sorry, Terah was the father of Abraham. Nahor might have been the father of Terah or the brother. It's Genesis, it's got to be in Genesis 11. So let's get it right. Nahor is Abraham's brother. There you go. Terah is Abraham's father. Probably Nahor might be the father of Laban or Lot. I think Haran was the father of Lot, yeah. But we'll go with Nahor might be the father of Laban. Milcah, yeah. Yes, Bethuel. There you go. So Nahor is the grandfather of Laban. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. So he's going with, well, you're mentioning yours, I'll mention mine. But unfortunately, what we know from Joshua is that they were in idolatry in that land. So he's kind of given an empty thing is what he's doing there. So we need to move on. But one of the things that I had to bring up is a quote I've heard so often: my sin looks so bad on somebody else. And Jacob and Laban were living that, you know. Jacob couldn't stand the deception. Laban couldn't stand the deception. Yeah, well, they were both deceiving, you know, so at one point or another. But Laban is telling him, you can't cross over this border. Who did the chasing? Laban did. And now he's telling Jacob, but you can't cross over anymore. But he set up a boundary for himself too, so that's good. So then in 55, early the next morning, Laban gets to kiss them all goodbye, and so on. Everybody's living happily ever after. However, there's a border now that neither of them can cross. So as far as we know, they never see each other again, which probably was fine with both of them. Yeah. Okay, let's go on. Laban, chapter 32. Jacob also went on his way, the other way, of course, and the angels of God met him. Now, ladies, I want to stop there for just a second, because this is really a big deal. Why would the angels of God be meeting with Jacob here? Welcome home. I like that. Oh, I like that too. I'm going to lead you all the way through. Welcome home. You're on the way, and I'm here with you. Can you even consider what this might have looked like? We think of angels of God, a couple little guys sitting there next to him when he woke up in the morning. Or it could have been a multitude of angels all over around there. There's a story in the Chronicles, I think it is, where one angel of God wiped out an army during the night. So you think about this, even if there's only two, this has got to be magnificent and quite a pepper-upper, or what's the word? You know, this is going to be encouraging and letting him know he's going the right direction. So, yeah.
On verse 2, it says his army. So it was army, not just a little angel.
When you think about the night Jesus was born, you know, so think about this. I mean, was this the same as the night Jesus was born? Maybe not quite, but yet God's people are moving into his promised land. The land he promised Jacob he would actually have ownership in. So
Also, Jacob was recognizing that God was with him at this
Mhm.
time.
Isn't that huge? So this is where we're making progress, right?
Go through some stuff.
Yeah,
And
okay.
he needed that comfort, I think.
Okay.
Reassurance.
Good.
He needed it bad. He was thinking about it probably since he got there, about Esau and everything.
Good point. He's heading into a real spiritual and physical, possibly physical warfare. And so God is saying to him, I've got you. I've got this with you. You are not alone. I am here. And big deal. I mean, it's like this one little phrase here, and the angels of God met him, and you think, no, this is big. So, okay. Yeah, when Jacob saw them, he said, this is the camp of God. So he named that place Mahanaim. Jacob sent messengers ahead of him. Okay, now here's where Jacob needs some bolstering up. To his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. This is quite a bit south and to the east. He instructed them, this is what you are to say to my master Esau. Your servant Jacob says, I've been staying with Laban and have remained there till now. I have cattle and donkeys, sheep and goats, men servants, maid servants. Now I'm sending this message to my Lord that I may find favor in your eyes. When the messengers returned to Jacob, they said, we went to your brother Esau, and now he is coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him. Whew, in great fear and distress. Now, I don't know how big this angel host was, but I'm thinking it should have probably seemed more massive than the 400 men. But I'm human, and I'd be terrified too. So in great fear and distress, Jacob divided the people who were with him into two groups, and the flocks and herds and camels as well. He thought if Esau comes and attacks one group, the group that is left may escape. Then Jacob prayed, O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, O Lord. Now there's that covenant-keeping Yahweh term. That's personal. Here he is saying, my God, my covenant God, O Yahweh, who said to me, go back to your country and your relatives, and I will make you prosper. I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. I had only my staff when I crossed this Jordan, but now I have become two groups. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me and also the mothers with their children. But you have said, I will surely make you prosper and will make your descendants like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted. I've got 10 minutes, and I want to get through this because I think this is really important. I think that when you see Jacob's prayer here to God, he is absolutely in line with what he should be doing. Look at it carefully. How does he address God? The best way he can, right? The father of Abraham, Isaac, and then calls him that covenant name. But and he reminds God of what? His promises. He uses God's own words to talk to God about what he needs. When Jesus is being tempted by Satan in the wilderness in Matthew 4 and Luke 4, what does he use? God's word. This is the most powerful way you can go to God. Now, but you got to do it right. Don't just come up with some verse and tie it in. But you can go to the Psalms. You can remind God of what the promises are. Not that he doesn't know it, but remind him that you know it. And you want to be in line with his word. And this is what Jacob is doing. He's in line with God's word. And then look at verse 10. He is saying, I'm not worthy of any of this. He is acknowledging his position before God, that without God, he is nothing. But with God, he is saying, you said you'd make me prosper. You know, that's not conceit. That is an honest acknowledgement of believing that God is who he said he is and will do what he said he would do. And yet he's saying, but in myself, I can't do it. This is a beautiful prayer for him. And then he's asking him, I need help. I'm scared of my brother. I am afraid he's going to come and attack me and the mothers with their children. He's completely honest in his prayer. You know, sometimes we try to sound so holy when we pray. Why don't we just say, God, I need you. I'm terrified right now. And I know I'm not supposed to be terrified, but I am.
Yeah, and he says, save me.
And yes, he does say, save me. It's very important because he knew God would, because God made all these promises, yet he's being honest. I don't feel like it. I don't feel like I'm being saved. I need your help. And I think this is really beautiful for us to see this about his preparations here for, he did put himself here. Yeah, I know.
Guys, we can't go back and say bad things because you know what? Don't we all do that? And then we learn. He's learned right now, guys.
And he's
Saying, God, you promised me this, and I want to go with it.
right, right. And I love that because he is basically saying, I don't deserve this. But yeah.
But it tells us we all, what's the word you just used? Deceive? No, the other one after that, because I'm not allowed to say it. It starts with an S. You said
That we all screw up. I didn't know. Is that you, Pearl? Pardon?
When we get to the end of ourselves, that's when we seriously turn to God.
Say that again. That's really good.
Yeah, he finally got to the end of himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
he had no other place to look.
Right. At least it would appear. You're right. So, okay, let's go on to the next section. We're going to kind of highlight this, but we need to move because we got now 7 minutes. He spent the night there. So keep in mind, he has sent everybody else ahead, though, okay? But he's by himself there. No, I'm sorry, he's not yet. So he spent the night there, and from what he had with him, he selected a gift for his brother, 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 female camels with their young, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 male donkeys. He put them in the care of his servants, each herd by itself, and said to his servants, go ahead of me and keep some space between the herds. He instructed the one in the lead, when my brother Esau meets you and asks, to whom do you belong and where are you going and who owns all these animals in front of you, then you are to say, now these are some of the same words he used earlier when he sent the first people out, they belong to your servant Jacob. They are a gift sent to my Lord Esau. Now that's Lord with a small L. He's not making him a god. He is saying, I'm your servant, Esau. Now this is really nice of Jacob, and I'm not saying he's doing the wrong thing, except he's doing the inaccurate thing.
Because you told us before
Yes.
that he was wrong.
So God said who is going to be Lord over who?
Or he was going to be Lord.
Jacob was. So it's really nice and sounds really humble, but he might have gone a little far because he's got to remember that he bought this birthright and then stole the blessing, but he got it. So, but that's okay. We'll let it go. He's just trying to be nice. So so this goes on to the second and third, and he thought, I will pacify him, Esau, with these gifts I am sending on ahead. Later, when I see him, perhaps he will receive me. So Jacob's gifts went on ahead of him, but he himself spent the night in the camp. Now we're seeing that Jacob is alone in the camp. He has sent everything on ahead. The wives and children would be last. And he had all the herds go separately. They went on ahead, and now Jacob is alone. He's still in fear. Even though I loved his prayer, he's still afraid. Normal. Listen to the rain. That night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 maidservants, and his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. So this is where he sends them on ahead. After he sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, let me go, for it is daybreak. But Jacob replied, I will not let you go unless you bless me. The man asked him, what is your name? Jacob, he answered. What does Jacob mean? Deceiver, supplanter, grabber. Then the man said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men and have overcome. Jacob said, please tell me your name. But he replied, "Why do you ask my name?" Then he blessed him there. So we don't know what the guy's name is, do we? Except we do. Because so Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." The sun rose above him as they passed Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. Therefore, to this day, the Israelites do not eat the tendon attached to the socket of the hip, because the socket of Jacob's hip was touched near the tendon. Okay, so Jacob sends all this ahead, broken up into herds with the servants, 550 animals plus, you guys. So he's really trying to kiss up to Esau here. But then Jacob's alone in the camp, and who begins to wrestle with him? A man, and that's what it says, a man. You're right. We don't know who it is till the end of the story. And why do you suppose this is happening?
This is when he really gets to know God.
Okay. This is where they are one-on-one now. So
I could be wrong, but I kind of thought is because Jacob wrestled within himself of what was going on, and God was wrestling with him of what he wanted him to do. I don't know if that's true. But
okay. I think there could be something there. There's definitely a warfare going on inside of Jacob on how to do things right and where to turn and all of that.
Sherry, I don't think that Jacob is showing faith by giving him this gift, because he just prayed that prayer and God's going to deliver him without giving him those, elaborate gifts. So he's kind of, like what you said, taking it back in his own hands.
Oh, totally. You've
And,
heard that
Let me
verse.
give you a gift, kind of to pacify him, like it says.
So I love the verse, cast all your cares on him. And we're also good at that. If you're a fisherman, you cast and then you reel it back. And you cast and then you reel it back. That's what he's doing. He reeled it back. Yeah, so he prayed the beautiful prayer, and then he turned around and said, "Now what can I do to fix things?" Just like we always do. Yeah. But then God gets him alone. And God says, I think a lot what Becky is saying, we're gonna wrestle this through. You are going to be one-on-one with me, and we're going to get a hold of each other. Now, we know God is sovereign again, and even as the angel of God, this appears to be, could have done anything, Jacob is not willing to let go of God here. We have to give Jacob some credit here, and this is where I think we're seeing Jacob move into the man God is calling him to be. Fascinating thing, when you read the rest of Genesis, when Jacob is working in the flesh as a human being like all of us, he's called Jacob. It's when you see him operating as the one who's going to be the leader of the nations and all of that, then he's Israel. So we're seeing that this wrestling is going to take place for the rest of his life. But God has given him a permanent reminder of who he was wrestling with. With the hip. And that was Paul who had the thorn in his side. But the same idea, you're seeing that in the weakness, God is made strong. And that's what this is saying here too. This is to remind Jacob, just like ladies, I want you to go back in your own lives and think of times when God has got a hold of you and left you with pain, a hurt that maybe is still hurting. It could be the loss of somebody you love. It could be a health crisis, a financial crisis, something that has changed your life that would appear it was not for the good. And yet when you look back, you can see, no, God was in the middle of that. But giving Jacob some credit here, Jacob was not willing to let go of God.
Until he was blessed.
And what was that?
Until he was blessed.
He was blessed. And he was blessed with a name that was better than deceiver. So some people say Israel could also be called Prince of God.
This reminds me that we all wrestle with God. We have free will, or we have the sin nature or the flesh versus our Holy Spirit, and we're always wrestling with God.
And we have the Holy Spirit.
We do, yeah.
Yeah, and we
thankfully.
still wrestle.
And we still
and
wrestle.
Jacob does not have that gift of the Holy Spirit. That came in the New Testament. But it
wrestling with God.
exactly. And so he's yeah. But it's just that's a great way to put it.
And something that, it says that he saw God face to face, but
Right.
lived.
But keep in mind,
But it was night.
nighttime, but also keep in mind, though, what we're dealing with. We are dealing with a flesh and blood person here. He's dealing with a man, which probably is, what would we call it? A Christophany or a theophany, which is a big word of saying a pre-incarnate Christ. So, and live. And yet we see that there were times when you have people who saw the angel of God and lived, but even questioned it. I think it was Samson's mother who said, "Oh no, I saw God, can I live?" You know. So you're seeing that this representation of God, but we don't see anybody actually seeing God, because I think it was Moses who got all these things, or Elijah, but Moses too. Yeah, both of them, yeah. So, okay, we have to quit, and I'm so sorry. I feel like I did not do justice to this last part, but I'll give you a couple little quotes here I have. When we hold on and wait for the blessing and submit to God's will, it will change us. We might not walk with a limp, but we will walk differently. And I thought that was really good. Just that idea that we have to hold on and wait for the blessing, but then we have to submit, and it might cause pain, and it will change our walk forever. So, yeah. Good stuff, good stuff, good stuff. So sorry that I rushed you guys through at the end. It's just the way it always goes, doesn't it? 3 minutes late. I'm going to close this in prayer, and you guys just visit for a little bit. Lord God, again, we just thank you. Lord, I feel like we get to see you when we study your word. And what a privilege it is, Lord. And we cannot leave here changed. We cannot get done with your word without having our walk changed somewhat. So I pray, Lord, for each one of us here, that if anything is said that's not from you, I pray it will not be remembered. But things that are from you, Lord, I pray that it will change all of us, that each of us will have a different walk because of the fact that we met with God today. Lord, we ask for your blessing on us. We ask for your blessing on those we love. I pray that you'll bring us back together again safely next week, and as we gather around your word again. And we give you honor and glory for whatever you do in our lives. We love you, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, we technically have till 11:15, but I don't want to do that because we'll do it. Oh, my privilege, really. Well, and maybe we can even talk about some of this next week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My question is, when there was a definition of a name, did it come before they were given the name, or was it because of their character?